Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener. This is actually the first program of the year here at Kardec Radio. Last week, we had some difficulties connecting because our author who was going to be interviewed wasn't able to make it, but he's going to be here. Dr. Mel Madrona with his wife, Barbara, and co-author of his book, Remapping the Mind, are going to be here in 2 weeks. So come here because they guaranteed us they're going to be here with us and no problems will happen. We hope so too. But today is the very first program, live program at Kardec Radio. And we're super happy because this is 2016. We're moving forward and progress is always good. It feels good. I know many people have been writing to us, asking questions about what's happening to the world. Can Kardec Radio explain to us? Is the world getting worse? Is it getting more problematic? Well, I'd like to share with you that the Spiritist Magazine at the website, thespiritistmagazine.com, has its new release, and it has several articles addressing these very issues from a Spiritist perspective. Why don't you get there? The Spiritist Magazine is a periodical by the International Spiritist Council, and it is totally free of charge for you. You can get access to it in a free app, either at your Google Store, Android Store, or at the Apple Store. Just go Spiritist Magazine and you have access to it. Or you can also go to the website, thespiritistmagazine.com, and read from its own PDF. And if you want the print out, it's very simple. You can order it with our partner, MagCloud, hpmagcloud.com. Just go to the website, thespiritistmagazine.com, and you'll see order here, click order, you receive it at the door of your home. It's a beautiful magazine. I like better the printout, to tell you the truth, but we have so many blessings with the technology nowadays that, I wouldn't waste the time, a minute, but, go directly to the website and click on the magazine, read about it. It's a lot about happiness, peace, what's happening around the world, many beautiful articles that you can explore and get to know more about it and feel hope, joy, and strength. We need to practice it. Today, we have a special program. It's about life. It's about near-death experiences, but it's not that same old story. Okay, we had near-death experiences, which is interesting, but we know it happens. People are declared dead, and then they come back to life, and they say, life has not ended. I was there, I saw this, I talked to this, that, and the other person. But the question is, what happens after that experience? Have you read any book about it? I don't think so, because as far as I know, this is the first book to talk about life after near-death experiences. It's about the miraculous stories of people who went through near-death experience, came back, and it's not only to talk about that experience, but what happened next. I'll quote from the very book by the author, Debra Diamond, who is here with us. We're so blessed she is here with us today. She says in some parts of the introduction of the book, social and psychological after effects, such as increased spirituality and enhanced psychic ability, are difficult to measure and verify. I quickly moved beyond those after effects to examine the more tangible cognitive and physiological gifts abilities that could be measured and verified. Are you interested? I am very interested too. It's a wonderful book to make us meditate about life, making a difference. If you want to know more about the book and the author, go to the website DebraDiamondAuthor.com. Debra has such an interesting life. She's going to talk to us more and more about it. But she's a former Wall Street money manager who left a high-profile job to pursue a life of spirituality and purpose. Wow. Her life, I think, represents the transition we are yet to see and are seeing little by little on the earth. Let's go to a break where we're going to listen to a beautiful message that was recorded by our dear friend, John DeRosa. Hi, John. I know you're there listening to us. If you have any question, we have the line open here. We miss you. We hope to see you next week at the Spiritual Side of Virginia. And we're going to listen to the message he recorded for us, which was psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier and published in the book Among Brothers of Other Lands. It talks about life after life. After this in a message, Debra Diamond is going to be here to talk about her book, Life After Near Death.
Life After Life by the Spirit Anderson. Not all persons are given the wisdom, but all do have the gift to testify through the love to each other in our daily experiences. In truth, our social condition, color or race, age or nationality do not prevent us from the duty to serve. We are all challenged to do good things at all times. God is love. Nobody is all good and nobody is all bad. Each of us is self-centered on a course of development to reach a higher plane of activities. God has enshrined His divine attributes within us. As one goes higher, evolution is expressed by word, equilibrium, love, and light. Let us be progressive with Jesus. How can we do this? Service first. Spiritual refinement is man's soul experience, life after life, over and over again. Our present awareness extends over an extended period of the past. The area of experience varies from man to man. Each man only exists in the place for which he has fitted himself. Nobody can evade that which is in his own consciousness. Actually, there is no death. As we live in our earthly body, our life continues in the beyond, according to our thought. Therefore, we come back to the physical world through rebirth, to conquer perfection, till we get complete command of our impulses and functions. Marvel not that I said unto thee, Ye must be born again. Jesus, John chapter 3, verse 7. This message is from the book Among Brothers of Other Lands. It was received by the medium Valdo Vieira while traveling in New York City with the medium Chico Xavier on July 7, 1965.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Books of André Louise. Through the hands of the most prolific medium of all times, Chico Xavier, the spirit doctor André Louise wrote a series of books that unveil the mechanisms of life and life after life. From the best-selling novel No Solar, Our Home, to And Life Goes On, the reader will find illumination for a fulfilled life on Earth as well as immortal happiness. Check the many titles available at the international distributor EDI CEI of America. Their website is www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio. Traveling to another country? Immigrating elsewhere? Prepare yourself by reading the book Among Brothers of Other Lands, in which several loving and wise spirits wrote through the hands of Chico Xavier and Waldo Vieira, telling all of us the tips and hints of a successful transition to a new land. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Do you want Spiritist books for your children? At Edicei of America, you'll find a collection of them, from the best-selling book Our Father, in which the Spirit Mei Mei, through Chico Xavier, brought countless poems, stories, and folk tales based on the Lord's Prayer, to the beautiful and educational collection by the author Edailson Salles on Back to School and many others. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
And now we return to our program.
Yes, dear listener, it's all about life. What happens when we come back from an extraordinary experience, like near-death experience? We know that many people change their lives, but how so? What actually happens? No book, as far as we know, has explored this much information as Debra Diamond, and she's here with us at Kardec Radio today to talk about it. A book that she is launching this month, this year, 2016, and is potentially going to make a difference in people's lives. Let us welcome her. Thank you so much, Debra, for being with us at Kardec Radio today. How are you?
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much for having me and for that lovely introduction. I appreciate that.
So, Debra, it's so interesting. We're witnessing and participating as well as inhabitants of the planet Earth, the transformations of the planet. And your life in itself has been a true transformation. You were a money manager, and now you are pursuing a life of spirituality and purpose. Can you tell us a little bit what happened, how that transformation happened?
Yeah, of course, Vanessa. Yes, you're correct. I was a money manager. I was on Wall Street for about 25 or 30 years as a money manager. I was also a commentator on CNBC, a regular commentator on CNBC. And I had what I would call a high-profile life. I began my career on Wall Street as a healthcare research analyst, and the reason I share that with you is because it's pertinent to the work that I did on life after death. Mm-hmm. I was in the investment business for many years, and what was unusual was that while I was in the investment business, I always knew things, and I didn't know how I knew things, these things, but I just knew things. For instance, I would know if a stock was going to do well. I would know about a company, before I even did the research on the company. I would know about the management before I met the management. Now, you have to understand, on Wall Street, there is no discussion of, psychic ability. That's just not part of the Wall Street vernacular. So I just took it for granted. My boss used to say to me, Debra, you have really good instincts. And I used to think, yeah, I guess I have good instincts. That was the only way I could understand, what was going on. And that was pretty much what happened for many years. I, did very well. I had a good feel for things, and I didn't try to analyze it in any great detail. But in 2008, I decided that I would take an intuition development class in New York because I thought, well, I have good intuition. It would be fun to take a class to develop it a little bit further. And I went off to New York for a weekend class. And in this class, there were about 25 people, none of whom I knew, men and women. And we did a few exercises Saturday morning, and I was getting everything in these exercises, and I couldn't understand how I was getting them, but oh well, for some reason I was able to do these exercises. And then the teacher, we took a break, and then the teacher said, now we're going to do a seance. And my reaction was, yeah, I don't think so. I didn't really come for a seance. This is an intuition development class. I'm not really too interested in the seance. But the bottom line was it was still Saturday morning. It was a weekend class. And so I decided, well, I'll do this seance. Nothing's going to happen anyway, and then we'll move on to the next exercise. So the teacher put us in a meditative state and said, if you see anything, when I take you out of the meditation, if you see anything, let me know, and I will tell you what to do. And I thought, well, that's fine, but it doesn't pertain to me because I'm not going to see anything. So we meditated, and then she took us out of the meditation, and she said, does anyone see anything? And I looked around the room, and everyone was looking at each other, and I raised my hand, and she said, yes, Debra, what do you see? And I said, I see about 50 people. And I had, what's called a spiritually transformative experience. Something happened to me to shift my consciousness. And I was seeing people who were my relatives. I was seeing people who went with the other individuals in the class, none of whom I knew. And then I was actually seeing people who had passed who were just kind of like strolling through the room, like 42nd Street showgirls, because, I was in New York. And I, really had no idea what was going on. I was completely flummoxed. I was frightened, and I really was, had no context for what was happening. So it was very difficult. But the teacher said, well, if you see someone in the corner of the room, they probably go with someone sitting in that corner. So I said, well, I do see someone in the right corner, and I described him. I said he's a dark-haired man with a handlebar mustache and a big white smile. And the woman sitting in that corner started to sob. And she said, I can identify that person. That was my fiancé. He died 2 years ago. Wow. So the woman in the corner said, during the break, if I show you pictures on my cell phone, would you be able to identify him? And I said, sure, because he was plain as day to me. So during the break, she flipped through some pictures on her cell phone, and I said, there, that's him. She was flipping through the pictures, and I saw him. She started crying again, but she hugged me and she thanked me. And it was not lost on me that I had done something significant for someone. Now, you have to understand, I come from Wall Street. I come from a Wall Street background where nobody thanks you for anything, and there are no hugs either. So so it was, I realized I had done something pretty profound and meaningful, and that registered with me. The rest of the weekend, I continued in the class, and a few other things happened, but I was still, kind of in a state of mild shock, I think, from all of this. So Sunday night, I drove back to Baltimore from New York. I live in Baltimore. And on the way home, I called one of my sons. I have 3 sons, but this one is very logical. He always scores high in logic tests. So I called him, and I explained what happened. And he didn't say a word. And when I was all done, he said, well, that makes sense. He said, we're just energy, and the energy has to go somewhere. So that gave me a context for understanding what was happening, although I can't say that I was completely comfortable with it. But that was sort of the beginning of how this transition that I went through got kick-started. And it took a few more years for it to unfold and for me to become comfortable with it. And I tell that story in the book just to lay the groundwork for what happened next and how I got involved in doing research into near-death experience after effects.
It's so interesting because, Debra, I see many people nowadays undergoing a lot of stress and a lot of focus on the material part of life. People blame on materialism, but we can't forget the material part of life is life too. The only thing is if we only focus on that part of it and forget about the essential part of us, which is the spiritual. But in your transformation, do you think you were somewhat permeable to this? You say it took a while for you to digest all of it, but do you think for the shift to happen, you were somewhat permeable to let it happen? What was the permeability that happened to you? Because I've seen lots of spiritual transformation. People were either suffering a lot and then they finally found what they needed, or they were questioning a lot and found no answers, and then they finally found the light at the end of the tunnel. Would you say you were permeable somewhat?
I have thought about that, and honestly, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that that was a question that I asked of the case, the people in the book, Life After Near Death. I did ask that question about all these individuals as well because they all went through remarkable transitions. And it seemed as if many of them either were in training, in a sense, for this shift, or some of them actually asked outright they knew there was something else out there. And they just, they set an intent, to manifest it. Now, can we say that they manifested their NDEs? I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but there certainly seems to be some sort of link between intention and manifestation and producing some sort of spiritually transformative or near-death type experience. But it doesn't appear to be the type of thing where you can, just decide that you're going to shift your life and the next day it's going to happen. These are events that take a very long time to unfold typically. But I can't answer, for in my particular situation, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I see. No, that's okay. But, in your book, what we find it very interesting is that you start talking about people's transformation, not only the very moment, but past to it. So from your experience to deciding on taking this new route, what happened next? What was the after effect of your own personal transformation that led you into this book?
Okay, well, sure. I'd be happy to answer that. After this intuition development class, I came back to Baltimore, and I didn't tell anybody what happened because how do you talk about this sort of thing? But people say, what did you do this weekend? And someone says, well, I went to see a movie, and I say I saw dead people. I mean, that just doesn't, that's just not how it works. So I didn't tell anybody. And you have to remember most of the people I knew worked on Wall Street, so they really wouldn't. This is not in their nomenclature. It's not in their frame of reference at all. So I didn't say anything. And that summer, I decided to go to Taos, New Mexico. Now, Taos is in a vortex, an energy vortex. It's a very spiritual community. It's an alternative community. And I had been out to Taos probably 6 or 7 times in the past. It's a place I was familiar with. And I'm also a painter. I'm an artist. And I thought I would go out there that summer to paint. That was what I thought was my intent. I rented a place for 2 months to go out and paint. And what happened was, after a few years, I was still there. And that's not an unusual story for Taos. In Taos, when you ask people, how long have you been there, they say, well, I came for a weekend about 20 years ago. So the place has a magnetic hold on people, on a certain type of person.
Wow.
So it was in Taos that I began to unpack this experience that I had, because out there when people say, now we haven't talked about this, but I am a psychic and a medium. And that was as a result of this, obviously this experience. But out in Taos, when people say, what do you do? And you say, I'm a psychic, they say, oh, me too. It's really not a big deal. So, out there is where I unpacked this, where I became comfortable with it, and I began to do the work. I took some classes, I taught some workshops, I began to do readings, and this is where my practice unfolded, and I was completely fine with all of it, So that was the beginning stages of, that's when I initially began to shift, and my life began to transform. I eventually came back to the East Coast, which is where I lived and where my family is. I eventually came back to the East Coast, and I thought, well, when I returned, I thought that's the end of this psychic business, because on the East Coast in Baltimore, people aren't going to be that interested in this. But I found out when I came back that wasn't the case. Soon after I came back, I was approached by a woman who had had a near-death experience. She had a cardiac arrest at 39 in a Johns Hopkins hospital, and she asked if I would read for her, do a psychic reading for her, which I did. And after that, she asked if I would read for her friend, and her friend asked if I would read for her mother, and then they asked if I would do some workshops, and one thing led to another, and I had a practice, on the East Coast before I knew it. Now, all of that eventually led to my work in the NDE world. And if you like, I can tell you a little bit about that.
Sure, please. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I was asked to read for a well-known near-death experiencer. This was a man who'd been written up. He's been written up in the New Yorker. He's been written up in a book by Oliver Sacks. He's a well-known guy who was struck by lightning and had a near-death experience, but he returned and was able to hear symphonies and play them on the piano. And this was an ability. He didn't have this ability before his near-death experience. So I was asked to read for him in Washington, D.C., and I read for him. And psychics see things in symbols, and when I read for him, I was getting some very unusual symbols. And when I came back to Baltimore that evening, I was thinking about that reading, and I was thinking, what happened to him in his near-death experience? How is it that he is able to hear symphonies? What about other near-death experiencers? What do they get, if anything? And what are they supposed to do with it, and how does this happen? So I went online, and I Googled near-death experience after effects, and guess what I found out? There's very little research. There's very little research.
True.
So I thought, well, I guess I'll have to do the research. Now, it's not as far-fetched as it seems, because in the investment business, I started out as a healthcare research analyst, and not only that, I did research on companies and industries that were so cutting edge that, well, they were so early stage they weren't even cutting edge. So I was used to doing original research. When I look at it now, when I stand back and look at it now, it seems to me that this was all kind of teed up, that, somebody wanted me to do this. There seems to be some sort of grander plan here, because it's unusual. I have a background in research, and I'm a psychic now, and, I was primed to do this kind of work. So I decided I would do the research, but as you said early in the show at the introduction, I wanted to focus only on those after effects that were irrefutable, that were demonstrable and irrefutable, because there were many people who came to me and said, I'm more spiritual since my near-death experience, or now I'm a psychic. But the thing is, I couldn't prove that. I can't prove that you're more spiritual than you were before. I can't prove that you're more psychic or that you are a psychic now. I just can't prove it. So I wanted cases that were irrefutable. So I broke it down into those cognitive after effects, which include music, newfound musical ability, newfound mathematical ability, newfound artistic ability, and physiologic after effects, which include enhanced hearing, enhanced vision, enhanced IQ, electrical sensitivity, and spontaneous healing. And there are a few others. And the truth is there are many, many cases. We all have heard of Evan Alexander and his spontaneous healing,
Yes.
but there are many cases of spontaneous healing. It just so happens that we know about him because he was a Harvard neurosurgeon. So,
exactly.
right. But there are many cases, and so it was very interesting, and I learned about these cases. Some of it was through word of mouth. Some of it was, through introductions and whatnot. And I, for my research methodology, I interviewed the individuals and I gave them questionnaires. So it was a very kind of typical research methodology, except for one thing. I also did readings on them because, it occurred to me they had questions that couldn't be answered. They weren't going to be answered on a questionnaire. They didn't know the answers, and I certainly didn't know the answers. Questions like, who are the beings that I met in my NDE? Or why didn't I see the light? Or how come I didn't go through the tunnel? And they couldn't be answered on a questionnaire, and they were interested, these people were interested in exploring the answers, and they were open to having readings because they thought maybe, they would find out more about what happened to them.
Yeah.
So we did a combination of, traditional research and psychic readings. And in fact, in the psychic readings, a great deal of information unfolded, much more than I ever expected. Originally I thought, I'm going to investigate these various buckets of after effects, and won't that be interesting? But in fact, what happened was very quickly I was taken into the whole field of consciousness. And, and you know what that's like because it's, the last great mystery of science. It's something that we still don't really understand very well. So it's been quite a journey for me as well.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. But, we're so interested in knowing about these after effects, but we have to give a break, Debra. As soon as we come back, would like to know about what you found out in this research and how we can actually bring also transformative information to those who are listening to us, okay?
Absolutely.
We will return to our program after these messages. Want to learn more about the ins and outs of mediumship? The book, In the Realms of Mediumship, by the spirit doctor Andre Luiz through the medium Chico Xavier, analyzes the various aspects of mediumistic communication and mediumship. He also praises the efforts of mediums who are faithful to the spiritual mandate they received before they reincarnated, warning them about the risks of badly practiced exchanges between the two worlds. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
The Spiritist magazine is a trimestral digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Study Spiritism online at eSpiritism. eSpiritism is an online tool to promote the study and practice of Spiritism while contributing to the preparation of Spiritist practitioners. For full access to courses, go to www.e-spiritism.org.
If you missed out on any previous shows, no worries. We have an on-demand section of all previous shows and interviews. Go to our website at www.kardecradio.com.
Emmanuel's Novels. The reputable mentor, Emmanuel, wrote a 5-book series of Spiritist novels that can truly transform your life, starting with 2,000 years ago, Emmanuel delights our minds with the true account of characters that are so similar to each of us. Discover yourself in Emmanuel's novels and live better. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we would like to remind you that this coming April, the United States Spiritist Council is organizing its 10th U.S. Spiritist Symposium, and it's all about the transformative power of love. It's going to happen on April the 23rd in San Diego. We are going to be there, and it's going to be fantastic. Great speakers, people from all around the United States and potentially other countries as well. Just go to the website spiritistsymposium.org and get to know more information. It's the 10th U.S. Spiritist Symposium in San Diego this year. I think you're going to love it. And later in October, the International Spiritist Council is organizing its international meeting, which is going to happen in Lisbon, Portugal this year. And more information you can find at the website of intersay.com, which is the website of the International Spiritist Council. Well, dear listener, we're talking about life. We're talking about life and life after an amazing experience, near-death experience. We say amazing, which is not exactly how I feel sometimes, because we're talking about people being declared dead, and then they come back to life. Science is yet to explain why this happens, what happened there, how people were dead and then came back to life, etc. Well, Allan Kardec himself, in the Spirit's book, addresses these questions. Of course, he didn't use the term near-death experience because in the 19th century, the term was not coined. It was first coined by Dr. Raymond Moody Jr. in the 20th century. But the experience of being declared dead and coming back to life. We know that death was not really happening there, but we know there is something that is happening to the spirit that is connected to that body through its spiritual body. There's almost a total disengagement, but not quite. Science cannot pick up yet on the true disengagement because it's more subtle. This is another discussion for another day, but just this is a teaser for you, dear listener, because the Spirit's book can explain this. But here, Debra Diamond, the author of the book that is being released in this January, Life After Near Death, she talks about what happens to those who experience near-death experience after that experience, which is something that has never been explored to this depth. It was mentioned here and there by researchers, but not in this depth, which is very interesting. So, Debra, when you talked about you researched on it in a more tangible way, talking about physiological differences, cognitive differences on the people who experienced near-death experience, could you start laying out to us what you found out in a more tangible way regarding these after effects of near-death experiences?
Sure, Vanessa. Well, there are a couple of after effects that have been very briefly looked at about that are more social and psychological, and I think you mentioned them at the beginning of the broadcast. But one of the after effects, and it's more social, and I did not go into it in a great amount of detail, but it is important, is that about 65% of people who've had near-death experiences do end up divorced. What happens is that, they've changed so profoundly, and their spouse usually says to them, if you just stayed the way you were, we'd be fine. But the truth is, they can't. They've changed, and they can't go back to the way they were. So, many of these people end up divorced. It's sad. Now, also, they find that the jobs that they had are perhaps no longer satisfying to them. Often the friendships change because, a lot of the fabric of most people's lives tends to be kind of ordinary and mundane and full of, the day-to-day things that we all have to do. But, once you've had a near-death experience and you've been out in the universe and in many cases, these people have had, pretty extraordinary experiences. Doing something like talking about, NCIS, or a television show, just is not very meaningful to them. So there's all those kind of social experiences that are part of the deal. And when people ask me, this sounds so great, how can I have one of these? I often think maybe I didn't do a very good job explaining this because you don't really want one of these. Now, the other thing is you mentioned the issue of dying and coming back to life. But the truth is, you don't have to die, be clinically dead, and come back to have a near-death experience. It's true that many of these experiences are due to trauma, to drownings, to heart attacks, or car accidents, but not all of them are. For many people, there is no trauma involved. But what is necessary is for your consciousness to be flung from your body, and sometimes it takes a traumatic incident for that to happen. In terms of the types of after effects, I can give you a few examples. There's a woman in the book who gets quantum physics downloads. She's got 32 bins of material stored in her closet. She is getting all these mathematical formulas and quantum physics formulas. She doesn't know what to do with them. She's a former hairdresser. She's got absolutely no experience at anything like this. Now, will science one day be able to unravel these formulas that she's getting? We don't know that. But there are many people who get mathematical information. They get sacred geometry in their near-death experiences. There are a number of people who come back as artists. There are two cases in the book of individuals who came back as artists, not only as artists, but as shamanic artists. One of them is a physician at Northwestern University Hospital in Evanston, Illinois. He's a very well-trained, brilliant guy, trained at Johns Hopkins here in Baltimore in biophysics as a PhD, and then went to Albert Einstein for his MD. Really, lovely, very, very intelligent guy. Had a near-death experience during a cardiac episode, and came back as an artist. And he's had a number of shows as an artist, and his art is very metaphorical. So there are many symbols in his art of ladders reaching towards the sky, of stars. Stars are kind of a repeated symbol that I heard as many people described their NDEs. Many of them talked about now they have the ability to close their eyes and they see stars, or they're called out at night to look at the heavens. We don't know what all that means. There are other individuals who came back with enhanced hearing or enhanced vision. There's a case in the book of a man, a former police officer. You'll find this interesting because his transformation is is just so vivid. He was based in L.A. and his region was the Watts and South Central L.A. He would beat people and gas people. We hear so much about the police these days and police brutality. Well, he was, a police officer. And today, he had a near-death experience, and today he writes grants for not-for-profits, for causes like people who are unwed mothers and, this sort of thing. He says, all I want to do is do good. So he coaches softball, and, he writes his grants, and he won an award as being the Citizen of the Year in his community in Oregon now. But he came back with enhanced visions. So before he had a heart attack on a plane. He actually did die. He was gone. I mean, he was gone, and they had paramedics on the plane who brought him back. But he had a physical before his cardiac episode, and he also had his eyes checked. So his eyesight before his NDE was 20/90, and then his eyesight was checked afterwards because he was actually on a television program, and they had to check everything, to make sure that everything he was saying was correct. So he had his vision checked again, and his vision is now 20/10, which is better than perfect. So it's still going strong. That was 5 years ago that he had his NDE. There are individuals whose hearing is enhanced, and I'm not talking about they can hear you hear you a little bit better. I'm talking about people who can hear conversations down the street or in the apartment building next door. There's actually a couple who are both NDEers, and they both have this ability, and when they travel, this is how they communicate with each other. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. I don't want to interrupt you, Debra, but
no, go ahead.
One of the things that came to mind is this. We often say in Spiritism that there are people, and it doesn't happen only to a few people, it may happen to many people around the world, but they are given what we call moratorium by their guardian angels, like extra time on the earth. They were supposed to die, but then they were granted an opportunity to extend their life, so they come back. And as you're saying this, it feels like the evidence we are bringing to us from these physiological changes is that they are not only given the time, but they are given physical resources to actually live an extended life, as if they have like a physical, spiritual plastic surgery. Would you say this? I don't know. It just came to my mind now. Would you say that what you found out could well go along these lines?
Well, it's a good point, Vanessa. And what I found out was that, yes, these are people who are given a second chance at life. That seemed pretty clear. But they're given a second chance, it seems, because they are to return to act as beacons of light for the earth. Many of them come back with abilities that they're able to use with other people. One thing I found out was that they all want to know, they all have two questions, all these people. The first one is, why me? Why did I have this experience? And the second one was, what's my mission? And they always use the word mission. They don't say, what's my life path, or what am I supposed to do now? They all say, what's my mission? It's as if they know that they were given some sort of mission when they return to Earth. They're supposed to do something. Now, for the lucky ones, they are able to execute a mission. There are people who come back with musical ability, and they use that ability to touch lots of people, or art. Same thing. You can touch a lot of people. But for many of them, they come back and they don't know what their mission is, and they spend the rest of their life often looking for what that mission is. But it seems pretty clear that they've been imbued with the light. They've been imbued with they come back with an altered energy, and they are meant to act as light posts, as pillars of light for the earth. So it seems as if the universe knows something, when they choose these people, because it does seem as if these people are chosen. It doesn't seem like it's a random event. It seems like it's very much with intent, and that they're chosen to come back and that they have a mission or a job to do, to raise the energetic level of our planet, to raise the vibration of our planet, and they do it, in various ways.
It's interesting. I have two questions from listeners. One that was sent by email, another one that is just being delivered here by Mark Lewis at the chat room of Blog Talk Radio. Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for writing to us. I'm going to ask Mark Lewis' question first, and then another one from Paul sees in Canada. Mark Lewis says, I am curious to know about the average of how long people kept their conscious awareness during the time when they were pronounced clinically dead. Has anybody lose their consciousness from about 8 to 10 minutes after they were pronounced clinically dead? Do you have that information, Debra? I know the book's not focused on that.
It's an interesting question. Again, not everyone is declared clinically dead. That's a great misnomer. The media has taken certain aspects of the near-death experience and glamorized them. They're very, lots of these aspects and elements are very visual, and they work very well for Hollywood and for the media. And having somebody die, that's about as dramatic as you can get. But not everybody does die. So, that's the first point. Secondly, anyone who has this experience, their consciousness is still alive. I mean, that's something that we found out in the research, that your consciousness is not attached. It seems it's not attached to your brain or your heart or any physical part of you. It's you talked about permeability. Our consciousness seems to be permeable. It seeps into us. It's alive. It's the energy, our essence, that continues to exist after our physical body is gone. So, and it's what is able to detach from the physical body in this experience. And when it detaches, it has this experience out in the universe. And it's vivid and it's alive. And in fact, everyone I spoke to wanted to know why that experience was more real to them than anything they'd encountered on Earth. And it seems as if the answer to that is because when our consciousness is detached from the physical body, it's not weighted down by the physicality, and it can experience, everything in the universe. So I have no statistic for the amount of time that, the consciousness can live separately from the body, but I can say that everyone in this study had, vivid and, very profound experiences when they did have their NDE.
Interesting. Thank you. Mark Lewis is also very grateful, he's saying here. And I have a question that was sent by email by a listener that said he won't be able to listen to this live, but later on demand. And this is Paul Cease from Canada. He's asking whether or not you found out that the majority of the people whom you interviewed and researched upon were transformed to the point that now they want to give their lives to helping others.
Yes, I think many of them, as I said, many of them believe, almost all of them believe that they're here to do a mission, that they want to help others. Not all of them know how to translate that into everyday life, though. And in fact, our Earth is not really set up for some of the changes that occur in these people after near-death experiences. The universe takes these people and they go through this very profound and transformative spiritual experience, and they come back sort of top-heavy with consciousness. And it makes them odd ducks here, in many cases. In other words, they don't, necessarily fit in. And while they want to help others, perhaps, the mechanism to use what they learned in their NDE or what they were given in their NDE doesn't always exist here. As I said, for the lucky ones, if it's music or art, yes, there's a foundation for that here on Earth. But for some of them, there's no way to translate what they got.
Exactly. But, another question that we have is this. At the beginning of the program, we were talking about your transformation from, a life that was so, focused on the material aspects to opening up to the spiritual part of it. And I don't want to label anything or be simplistic because I know it's deeper than that, but just in simple terms. Now, of all these people that you've observed, the physiological, cognitive differences, did you observe that they also valued more healthier habits in life? For example, we talk about eating crisis. We are living at a time in which people, indulge, they don't exercise as much, they don't have a healthy lifestyle. Would you say that after that near-death experience, they promoted healthier lifestyles?
That's a good question, and I would say the answer to that, by and large, is yes. Many of them become vegetarians. Many of them feel a need to connect to the earth. You know, they can't watch TV. They can't, you know, they have to turn the TV off because many things that they see really bother them. They're extremely sensitive because they're very open and they're very porous now. And relationships matter a lot more. So, you know, they are spirit at sort of the very highest level. But again, trying to translate that, you know, if you're like that and the guy next to you is, you know, watching the fights and drinking a beer, you know, how do the two of you, you know, where do you relate?
Yeah.
So, you know, so that's one of the issues. I mean, when people ask, how can I have one of these? It sounds so great. You know, you have to take into account we're still physical beings living on a physical earth.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you've got to go with that. I want to say, too, and this is just for anyone who's listening to the program, please feel free to, rather than to send me a message on Facebook, go to the Life After Near Death Facebook page and like that page, and that way you'll be able to keep up on any of the events and any of the posts that I put on that page, because there'll be inspirational sayings and posts on, you know, future events and whatnot. And again, the book does come out. The book will be published January 25th, but it is available for pre-order on Amazon now.
That's wonderful. And one part that I want to highlight to the listener in your book, which I found very interesting, very educational, was the question and answer chapter. When you talk about why people, let me read from the title. Okay, here, I'm just browsing the title here, part 3. Am I right? Why you don't want to experience an near-death experience. I think it's very interesting how you lay out questions and answers that are often asked by listeners and to us, and people ask overall about near-death experiences, and can be very clarifying as well. So what would you like? This is the first program of the year for us at Cardiac Radio, the live program of the year. Debra, for those who are listening to us in more than 80 countries around the world, what would you like to say as your final message regarding everything you've researched that can be transformative for this new year in their lives?
Well, it seems to me that the universe, that we're going through a period of transition here on Earth, and NDEers are just one part of that. You know, people who've had spiritually transformative experiences, and NDEers are part of this. And as I mentioned earlier, they are here. They've been put back on the Earth to become pillars of light for the universe. The rate at which number of people who are having these experiences seems to be increasing, and that would be in keeping with the transition that we seem to be going through on the Earth. So I think we're living in a unique time of change, and I'm just so grateful to be part of it.
You said it all. It's amazing. We are really grateful, Debra, for your research, for you putting the effort and the time on bringing this to the public, because many people may know such information, a little bit of it, but they keep it to themselves. And I think it's a blessing that you're sharing this with the public, bringing it in a very interesting and I think, deep book that talks about how we transform our lives after experiences. It's about giving a new meaning to our lives, and we really want to hear from you. Hopefully, you'll be able to come to Spiritist centers in the United States and around the world to tell in person about your book and we wish you the very, very best. Thank you so much, Debra, for being with us at Cardiac Radio.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and I would love to do that. That would be my great pleasure. And I wish you a very happy and joyous and peaceful New Year, full of light, and the same to all of your listeners.
Thank you. What a blessing, dear listener. What a blessing it is to know about Debra Diamond's transformation and how she is really taking part in the changes that are happening around the world. You know, stepping forward into publishing this unique book, Life After Near Death, Miraculous Stories of Healing and Transformation in the Extraordinary Lives of People with Newfound Powers. So interesting, unique. We've never heard of these accounts before about the after effects of near-death experiences, and I think this can be very appealing to your dear listener. Remember, not necessarily you have to go through near-death experience to transform your life. And as Debra says here, we can learn from one another by learning from each other, reading this book, getting to know more about how transformed lives were in those experiences. We can transform ours. That can be our own transformative experience, and that's the purpose of the book too. Not only to share, but to reach out to the hearts of all people around the world. That's what I took from the book, and we recommend to you. It goes hand in hand with the teachings we've been sharing with you through the Spiritist teachings. Throughout all its books go hand in hand with the teachings that Debra has brought to us. And I tell you this, what a blessing it is that she came from Wall Street money management to this beautiful world as well, in which we can hug each other and we can appreciate one another without obstacles, with no hidden agendas, and live a life so fulfilled because we are accepting ourselves as we are, as spirits, walking in this very blessed time that Debra Diamond mentioned to us. Now we're going to end the program, as we often do, with our prayer. It's a prayer of the heart. Let us pray. It's the first live prayer of Cardiac Radio in this year, and it's a prayer of kindness, because the world needs more kindness. Less judgment, more kindness, because we don't know what's happening in people's lives. And that's why we can't judge. We can only embrace, understand, and send kindness. Be kind to ourselves, be kind to one another, and let God do everything else, because God is the one and only. So right now we invite you to this beautiful, brief moment of collective prayer. Dear light of the universe, love, supreme love of the universe, dear God, thank you for bringing to us these moments of reflection and learning with Debra Diamond. Thank you for bringing us closer to us, for her experience, for her work that can bring new light to all of us around the world. May the letters of light in her book nourish the souls of every reader, bringing families closer together, friends, colleagues at work, neighbors, communities, cities, countries, and nations. May kindness be spread out as the approach of love in our lives. May this year be the year of mercy and kindness amongst us. Less judgment, more understanding. Thank you for this motherly love and the fatherly certainty that we're progressing to happiness and peace. And so be it. Dear listener, what a joy. We're very grateful for your participation. And we thank you for your comments, for your questions. And as you know, we always want to hear from you. Feel free to write an email at kardecradio.com. We have a beautiful website with a contact form. You can contact us and deliver your comments, your suggestions. We are always going to reply to you. And remember, you can get a hold of Debra Diamond's book at Amazon.com, Life After Near Death. And you can also, as she mentioned, go to the Facebook page, Life After Near Death, to get to know more about the book, the events, etc. And if you're in a Spiritist Center, invite her to your Spiritist Center. Let her talk about this book that is so good and talks about everything we talk about in our Spiritist Centers. True stories about transformation and how the world is really getting better. It's just a matter of time. Next week, next Saturday, January the 16th, 2016, we're going to talk about our chakras, vital centers. And we have here the author, Elizabeth Joyce, talking about her book, The New Spiritual Chakras. Very interesting, intriguing. And the week after, Remapping the Mind with Dr. Mel Madrona and the co-author of the book, Barbara. Well, this is it for today, dear listener. We wish you lots of blessings and, enjoy your life in kindness always. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.